Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to MLBB Academy, where we've got a brand new hero, Lukas, plus a quick breakdown on the latest adjustments to heroes and items. Let's go! Alright, first we've got the new hero, Lukas, a physical fighter that can transform into a sacred beast. First skill, Flash Combo. This is a versatile skill offering 3 different versions based on your vigor stacks, which you build up through basic attacks. When the skill is used without a vigor stack, it will deal damage in a target area. With 1 stack, it stuns enemies, pulls them toward Lukas, and adds bonus damage. With 2 stacks, you'll gain all the earlier effects plus CC immunity and more damage. And that's not all. If this skill hits an enemy hero regardless of its stack, you will heal 8% off your max HP. The best part is that it's a spammable skill. It only has a 5.5 second cooldown, and it goes even lower with cooldown reduction stat. Second skill, Flash Step. Lukas dashes to a target direction and enhances his next basic attack. When he lands that attack, he blinks behind the target and gains extended attack range for a few seconds. His basic attacks during this period also summon lightning storms for extra damage. This skill can be used to dodge or target those backline heroes. Ultimate, Unleash the Beast. Here's where things get wild. Lukas transforms into a sacred beast, gaining 20% additional attributes across the board. HP, physical attack, defense, attack speed, and range. Activating the skill again fires a shockwave blast that explodes on the first hero it hits. Upon explosion, there will be 3 aftershocks on the area for that extra damage. While in this state, all his skills are enhanced, giving him higher damage and bigger range. The catch? There's no cooldown for his ultimate. You can use it anytime, as long as his resolve bar is full. Passive skill, Hero's Resolve. This passive revolves around Lukas's resolve bar, located just under his HP. It fills gradually over time or faster when dealing damage to heroes. The bar drains while in beast form, so you'll need to manage it wisely. When leveling up, you'd want to prioritize his first skill, as this is your main damage source. Skill Combo. Lukas is all about chaining skills and basic attacks. For his combo, you'd always want to have 2 stacks of Vigor to maximize your first skill damage. You can start off by getting 1 stack of Vigor on any nearby minion. Use second skill to close the gap, then follow up with an enhanced basic attack to blink behind your target. By now, you'll have 2 Vigor stacks, perfect for unleashing his first skill to stun and damage your opponent. Follow up with a few basic attacks because remember, his second skill deals extra damage when doing basic attacks. Use his ultimate whenever you think you're at a disadvantage for that sweet 20% extra stats. Not only do you hit harder, but your defense also goes up while in this state. And if the enemy tries to run away from your beast transformation, you can secure the kill by unleashing your Shockwave Blast. Build. Lukas strives with a balance of attack and defense. His ultimate amplifies these stats, making him both a tanky frontliner and a damage dealer. Focus on cooldown reduction to spam his first skill and prioritize sustain to survive burst damage. Pair this with Vengeance for better survivability or Flicker for mobility. For the talent, go for Fighter for that extra defense and spell vamp. Laning phase. In the laning phase, you will be surprised how strong his first skill is, especially when used at full stacks. Just when the enemy thinks they have the upper hand, then comes your first skill. During teamfights, you can initiate with your ultimate. It has a pretty long duration and its enhanced range makes it a perfect tool against multiple enemies. With your Sacred Beast, you get a longer dash, allowing you to jump in the backline and target the squishy heroes. Tips. The item Thunderbelt can be a great complement to his game style. He can collect stacks with his enhanced basic attacks. And when he transforms into beast form, the hybrid defense from Thunderbelt is increased by 20%, making him a very tanky fighter. If you want to clear towers fast, you can use his second skill to gain extra damage on your basic attacks. It lasts for 4 seconds, making you a perfect tower destroyer. His first skill is a great displacement skill to push enemies toward your teammates. Watch how far I can move the enemy hero with a full stack. And I can do this while having crowd control immunity. But that's not all, because the push gets longer when you're in the ultimate state. So you might want to keep that in mind during team fights. Look for the squishy enemy, blink to their back, and push them toward your team. A double stack first skill has a big difference compared to a single stack. It has CC immunity and higher damage. So always try to get 2 stacks before using your first skill. Based on what I've seen, I think Lukas is quite strong. He has crowd control, damage, sustain, and most importantly, mobility. I'm pretty sure you'll enjoy him because of the many skills that he possesses. So are you on your way to become a top global Lukas? Now let's dive into the latest patch. While many heroes were impacted, the spotlight is clearly on attack speed fighters. The developers recognized a long-standing issue with these heroes. They've been overly dependent on basic attacks, leaving them vulnerable in the early game and restricted to a single role, split pushing by the late game. To address this, several fighters have been optimized. These changes aim to boost their early game presence and make them more impactful in team fights, giving them a real chance to shine in every phase of the match. Let's start with Sun, and the changes he's received might just make him your go-to hero for the season. In the late game, his first and second skills now have a shorter cooldown by 2 seconds. That means you'll be dishing out more damage or making those crucial escapes faster than before. Speaking of his second skill, it no longer stabs when it hits the first hero. That means you can easily dash without worrying where to aim. His third skill is improved in 2 ways. Not only does it deal more damage, but it now applies a 20% slow effect. Here's where it gets interesting. If his clones also use the skill, the slow stacks, adding up to a massive 60% slow effect on your enemies. That's right, Sun can now cripple an enemy's movement while still hitting like a truck. Of course, there's a catch. This power boost comes with a slight cooldown increase of 2 seconds. And don't forget about his passive. The healing is stronger in the early game thanks to an improved base heal, making him even more sustainable in fights. However, the maximum stacks of his passive is now down to 6. Each stack applies a 5% defense reduction, which makes it easier to reach the cap but slightly lowers the overall impact by 10%. There are a few nerfs to keep things balanced. His clones from the ultimate now disappear faster, lasting 8 seconds instead of 12. On top of that, his HP stats and attack speed growth have been slightly reduced. So, what does this all mean? Sun is now more versatile, especially in the early game. The higher healing, added slow effects, and improved escape options make him a stronger laner and team player. If you haven't tried yet, now's a good time. Now let's move on to Argus, and he's got some big adjustments. His ultimate still grants him that immunity, but here's the exciting part. The duration of the skill extends if he takes fatal damage. Watch this, if you're not taking deadly hits, the ultimate might only last 4 seconds. But when you do, the duration gets stretched, giving you even more time to wreak havoc on your enemies. This means you don't have to wait the last second to activate it anymore. You can use it earlier knowing the skill will adapt based on the damage you take. Of course, there's a trade-off. The cooldown for his ultimate is now longer, but here's the silver lining. If you don't take fatal damage, the cooldown is reduced by half. And there's more. When Argus activates his ultimate, he now deals damage to enemies around him, making it perfect for team fights and creating opportunities to turn the tide of battle. His passive also got some adjustments. While healing is reduced by 50 points, you'll now gain more malice energy for every critical strike you land. That means building critical items is now a must for Argus. Additionally, the passive's base damage has been increased by 30 points, giving him more punch in the early game. One of the most exciting changes is to his second skill. It now grants a full energy bar which you can store for your next basic attack. This allows Argus to unleash 2 enhanced basic attacks back to back. Here's an example. Cool, right? The trick is simple. Make sure your energy bar is full, use the second skill, and watch as you deliver a devastating double burst of damage. If you're looking for a fresh experience, Argus might be your guy. He's no longer just about his ultimate. He can now dish out serious damage with his improved abilities. The early game boost from his passive, the added burst potential, and the extra damage on his ultimate make him an exciting pick this season. Zilong is up next, and he deals extra damage when the enemy's HP is below 50%, and that extra damage applies to his basic attack and skills. This damage can add up pretty fast because of his high attack speed. But that's not all, because his passive heal is now higher by 20 points. To balance, they had to lower the attack speed buff on his ultimate. But don't worry, we've got the new effect on Rose Gold Meteor, which we'll talk about later. Now let's talk about Aulus, the attack speed fighter who just got a ton of changes to his kit. First up, his passive now maxes out at 3 stacks instead of 4. However, the penetration and movement speed buff from the passive have been removed. His second skill has become more versatile. It now slows enemies for 3 seconds, making it easier to stick to targets. There's also a new HP-based damage feature when used with a fully stacked passive, giving Aulus a better chance against tanky opponents. On top of that, he can now heal when hitting minions, something that wasn't possible before. As for his ultimate, it now grants a fixed 50 bonus damage to his basic attacks right from level 1. In the old version, you had to wait for a fully stacked passive to unlock that extra damage. In short, Aulus now has HP-based damage for better scaling against tanks, a slow effect to catch slippery enemies, faster stacking, making his kit more efficient, and an extra heal on minions, improving his sustain in fights. These changes make him a stronger and more reliable option for both early and late game skirmishes. Now let's move on to Rose Gold Meteor because this item will also affect those attack speed fighters. If we compare the old stats, we can see that it now gives 20% attack speed. It also comes with a new passive and it works like this. For every 1% lifesteal you have, you will gain 1 hybrid defense. Let's say you have a total of 30% lifesteal. With the new unique passive, you gain 30 hybrid defense. Simple, right? Who needs defense items when you have Rose Gold Meteor? Just add lifesteal and boom! Higher defense just like that. This is perfect for those who can't sacrifice an item slot for defense because their damage output will go down. Example is Zilong who needs to build these critical items. With the new Rose Gold Meteor, he not only gains attack speed and lifesteal, but also hybrid defense. However, there are some limitations to the item. The maximum defense you can gain is capped at 50 points. So if you have 60% lifesteal, you will only get 50 hybrid defense. Another limitation is that the effect is held for non-fighter heroes. That means marksmen will only get half of the hybrid defense if they use this item. So as you can see, it greatly benefits those attack speed fighters. No stat is wasted when they use this item. Now to balance the new passive of Rose Gold Meteor, the devs had to adjust the other items' lifesteal stats. Has Claws gets a minus 5% lifesteal, but in exchange, it received a plus 10 physical attack. Demon Hunter Sword gets a fixed 8% lifesteal, but its lifesteal stack is lowered by 1%. And those are the updates for the attack speed fighters. Moving on, let's check the rest of the patch. First is the buff on Carry, where her ultimate's basic attack received an extra 40 base damage. That's a big one because her ultimate releases 2 basic attacks when activated. With this buff, she can probably add a couple of defense items, and her damage will still hurt. Next on our list is the buff on Lancelot. They've increased the base damage of his second skill, while slightly lowering its attack scaling. This should improve his early game damage, especially when clearing the jungle camps, as well as those early gank attempts. Next is the buff on Irritant. Her ultimate's basic attack now has a higher base damage in the mid to late game. That means she doesn't have to farm the entire game to deal decent damage. Next, we have the buff on Diron. His passive will now heal based on the 8% of his maximum HP. The developer said they aim to make him more of a sustained fighter, allowing him to last longer in team fights. With this ability, he should be fit to use defense items with high HP. Next is the buff on Harriet. The developers increased his basic attack range, but in exchange, the dash distance is slightly shortened. This adjustment was made to make his combos smoother. But that's not all, because his dash is now faster. Can you feel the difference? I think this is a big one on Harriet, allowing slow hand players like me to perform his combo. Next is the buff on Cece's basic attack range. Here's the comparison of her range. That's huge, right? Now that it's bigger, you no longer have to go near the enemy to do a basic attack. You can stay in your position just like this. So what's so special about it? Well, that means it's now easier to maintain her passive stacks. CC mains will definitely love this patch. Next is Badang, whose first skill now has a shorter force swing time. That means less delay after using the skill. Only seasoned Badang players might notice this subtle but effective change. And that's not all. His ultimate now stuns enemies for a longer duration, making it harder for them to escape. To balance things out, the cooldown has been increased by a few seconds. So the ultimate is definitely deadlier, but you'll need to be more mindful of when to use it. Moving on to Alucard, his first skill now has a 1 second shorter cooldown, a solid buff. However, there's a trade-off. A 1 frame backswing has been added, so there's a slight delay before you can perform a basic attack after using the skill. Here's the old version. See how smooth it was? Almost instant, right? Now in the new version, there's a noticeable pause before the basic attack. Despite this, the change is still a win for Alucard mains because of that -1 second cooldown. Now let's talk about the nerfs. These heroes dominated the last update and the devs decided it's time to tone them down. Bruno's basic attack range has been shortened. Here's a side-by-side comparison. That's what you get for being famous. In the old version, he could hit towers safely out of their range using Malefic God, but now that's no longer possible. Fanny's mobility was off the charts, so they've reduced her energy regen by 1 per second. This tweak forces players to think carefully about their cables and overall energy management. Can she finally move out of the ban section? For Sicilian, his late game damage takes a hit. The first skill gets a nerf of 10 to 20% magic scaling, meaning you'll need to work harder on stacking if you want to maintain high damage output in the late game. Next, let's talk about the Malefic Gun item. The bonus basic attack range has been reduced from 15 to 12%, and the movement buff duration is now shorter. This was probably expected given how dominant marksmen have been lately. Finally, we have the MLBB Rising Open Tournament, your chance to showcase your skills on a bigger stage. The goal is simple: win weekly tournaments and climb your way to the pro scene. Remember guys, participation is free. If you're serious about competing, here's my tip: build a solid team, practice your roles, and prepare to face high-level competition. This could be your ticket to getting noticed by pro teams, so don't miss out. With this update, we're likely to see some big shifts in the hero meta. Harit, Irrital, Dirot, and CC received solid buffs that could make them much more popular in ranked games. Their adjustments might just push them into the spotlight for players looking to try something new. On the other hand, heroes who were already strong before the patch, like Granger, Hild, and Hayabusa, haven't been touched. That means they'll likely remain top-tier picks for players who want consistency. But what really has me excited are the attack speed fighters. These heroes could be on the verge of a breakout moment. With the introduction of the new Rose Gold Meteor, will players finally tap into their hidden potential? Or will their unique playstyle keep them in the shadows, overlooked, and underplayed? Only time and a few intense ranked matches will tell. And that's it for this patch update. Make sure to check the MLBB Academy section to stay ahead of the game. As always, stay safe, and thank you for watching.